Hi, everybody. Welcome or welcome back to my garden. My name is Vanessa, and I turn our yard into our own little happy place at home here in Zone 7B, Virginia. And I want to give you whatever tools I have to help you do the same. Today, I want to talk to you about this unusually warm fall weather we've been having here. I mean, are you having this warm fall weather wherever you are? People in my area are talking about all sorts of interesting phenomenon happening in their gardens. They were talking about irises that are not reblooming irises blooming. Many people are talking about their lilacs putting out beautiful lilacs, and we all know that lilacs typically bloom in the spring unless they're also the reblooming variety. One lady told me that one of her peonies rebloom. I almost didn't believe her because that's crazy. While there are many hybrids of a lot of our favorite spring plants that rebloom in the fall, I don't know of any reblooming peonies out there. And so I told her, I was like, girl, you should mark that peony and see if you could propagate it and see if you could get it to do it again next year, because that would change the whole game as far as peonies are concerned. But the whole point I'm trying to make here is that it seems like this fall in particular has been particularly strange. People who normally put their spring bulbs in the ground in the fall are wondering, should I do it? Should I wait? And so this warm weather has definitely thrown a lot of us for a loop. And today I want to share with you some potential problems indeed with the warm weather, but also raise your spirits and share some potential solutions and maybe some encouragement to keep going, because at the end of the day, Mother Nature will do what Mother Nature is going to do. And at the end of the day, you will still have a beautiful garden come spring. As I'm recording this video, we are in the middle of November. Typically in my Virginia garden, our first frost date average for the fall is typically placed at October 19th. We're exactly a month away from that, and we still haven't had a significant frost. We had a teeny tiny frost one morning that lasted maybe 30 minutes, but it did absolutely zero damage to the garden. The garden, while it looks extremely tired, is still doing its best to pump blooms. And so, if I'm honest, that's making it extremely hard for me to do my fall cleanup. I need to be doing my fall cleanup because the Christmas season is here. We have decorated the front of our house for Christmas, and I very much want to turn my energies to the inside of my house. Thanksgiving is soon coming, and I want to turn a lot of my energies to that. And by now, I would have done quite a bit of my fall cleanup. But it's hard to do any sort of fall cleanup whenever it's so nice out here. That's perhaps one of the main difficulties with the fall weather. It's a double-edged sword in a sense. While we love it, I do love it. We spend so much time out here. Mild falls and mild winters are so lovely because we just get to spend so much of the year out here. And the truth is, one positive is that we can continue to plant stuff, move plants around if we want to, because the ground is still workable and the weather is still so nice. The downside is the fact that it's hard to put the garden to sleep. Do you find that you're having trouble putting your garden to sleep, as they say it? Another downside to mild autumns and winters in particular is the fact that the insect population, especially the bad insect populations, may not lessen. The cold winter, especially the harshest parts of winter, serve as a way for nature to kill out a lot of the eggs of some of these bugs or some of the bugs themselves to lessen the population. I mean, the best example of this are mosquitoes, primarily because we can see mosquitoes and they're so obviously annoying. Typically, harsher winters means less mosquitoes, at least in the beginning of the season. But even with the rising population of deer everywhere, ticks and things like that find shelter and warmth in leaves. Warm winters make it especially easy for them to survive through the winter. A few other things that might happen with your warm winters might be that your returning bulbs from the previous years may start blooming a lot earlier than they normally would, especially those on the south side of your house. The south side, typically stays a lot warmer. Warm winters plus the warmest part of your house means that these bulbs are going to start blooming a lot sooner. So you might see daffodils in bloom as early as January, which is no problem at all. It just might be unusual for you to see that. One last thing you should be mindful of before we move to some of our solutions, in that when the falls are so warm, it's best to wait to plant your tulip bulbs to avoid getting the tulip fire disease that can harm your tulip bulbs, because you want the air temperature and even the ground to be a little bit cold to plant those bulbs, and it decreases the chances of that disease transferring to your bulbs. While warm autumns or falls in and of themselves present some challenges, perhaps the more challenging thing is if the warm weather persists through the winter, because plants need that time of dormancy to be able to perform nicely come spring. And should they not get that time, or worse yet, should the plant break dormancy a lot earlier than it's supposed to, then that could mean that you lose your flowers or your fruit come springtime. Okay, some solutions you might employ moving on out is, honestly, I'm planning on just taking a deep breath and enjoying the warm weather. Yes, it likely means that some of my hydrangeas that bloom on old wood and therefore cannot afford to break dormancy too early, it might mean that those hydrangeas, I may not get blooms from them next year. That's okay. I have enough other plants here that bloom in the spring that I'm just not worried about it. And so enjoy the warm weather, get outside because it's so good for your health to get out here and enjoy the weather. If this has become a theme in your area, as it has become in mine, I feel like in the last 5 years, the falls and the winters have just been milder than I realized. And this is not necessarily a problem. You have entire parts of our country that stays warm the entire year. The problem comes whenever we plant plants in our garden that are expecting a certain amount of chill time or are expecting to be in dormancy for a certain amount of period, but now the weather has shifted on them and now they're not performing as best as they could be. And so our gardens become in this weird in between area where we have plants that should be receiving certain conditions, but our weather is not giving it those conditions. So if you're in that sort of area, you might consider adding some natives to your garden. And this is because the natives to our country are probably going to be able to deal with some of the fickle situations a lot better than some of the non-native. All native evangelists say yay, because we're always looking for a reason to add natives to our garden apart from their benefits to our native bug populations. Another thing you might consider doing, especially if you're growing vegetables, might be that you plant some of these heirloom varieties for the same reason. A lot of the hybrids are bred to do a very specific thing, to perform in heat or to perform in cold, whereas I'd venture to guess, at least in my opinion, when I've planted heirloom plants, they tend to be more flexible when it comes to differing weather conditions. Another thing you might do is assess whether or not you've been in a drought. For the month of October, we most definitely were in a drought here, and those are horrible conditions for any plant to go into dormancy under. This will make it especially hard for plants to bounce back if they did break dormancy early and had to try to recover to attempt to bloom in the spring. And so if you notice that in the fall you are in a drought, you might provide supplemental water to your plants so that they can go into that dormancy period as healthy as possible so that they can survive the fickle nature of the temperature. And lastly, I just want to encourage you that most things will be fine. Mother Nature knows what it's doing. And I imagine that we're just going through cycles. And so, my question for you, seasoned gardeners who have been gardening for years and even decades, who have seen some of these changes in your gardens, what advice do you have for us, newer gardeners who have only been doing it for maybe 10 years or less and therefore have never really seen these changes that we're seeing now as far as gardens are concerned? My goal here is to share whatever I have with you to help you turn your own backyard into your own happy place at home by knowing both how to design a beautiful space in your backyard and how to grow beautiful plants for your family's enjoyment. And so if you're interested in learning another tip about that, I encourage you to check one of these videos up here where I share another tip with you. Thanks so much for being here. Have a good day.